Welcome all to the Node. I am Mike, aka Veteran Crypto, and this is your place for news, interviews, and crypto and DeFi education. So, if that's what you're looking for, you came to the right place. So, with that, let's go ahead while we're waiting on David. Let's go ahead and jump on over to here, and I'll show you where to find us. So, if you're watching on X or any other platforms and you want to join the chat, the only place that you can chat with the community and that we can see it and put it up on the screen and interact with it for the most part is on YouTube. Unfortunately, Arena has yet to do an integration to where we can put their questions up on the screen. I am monitoring Arena though, so if you want to find us over here on YouTube, find us at the Node Network, all one word. And if you want to find us on X, you can find us at the Node_network. And last but definitely not least, this is the node of the node. This is where everything comes together. So if you are looking for a no-cost education, when it comes to TradFi, fiat, crypto, DeFi, wallets, whatever, we offer it at no charge. I don't know anybody else that's doing this. There's no gimmicks. There's no tricks. We're not going to, sell your email or anything like that. Just make an account and start going through the courses, taking the quizzes, make sure that you're learning the material. If you have any questions, feel free to join our Discord. It's no cost. You can ask all the questions you want. I'm in there. David pops in from time to time. There's plenty of people. Scotty D is a regular in there, very knowledgeable dude. Mooks and a bunch of others. Happy to answer questions. So by all means, please jump into all the stuff that we offer at no cost. If you want to know when our different shows are on, so come on, why there it goes. All right, so we have, I believe it's 9 different channels now.
Yeah, so Mike, what I did,
programming, you can see all of our morning and afternoon shows are in gold.
Oh, Mike,
sorry, my internet's acting up. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. It's jumping around a little bit. So basically, all I did with the schedule here is I removed a lot of those private calls in school. I basically just condensed them into one and then made it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so that had the effect of cutting the number of original shows from 14 to 9. So it was just like the way that it was counted. But we didn't actually really change the number of original shows. So we still got nine original shows. And
I know that. Man. I just I used to say 7. Hey David, I'm gonna restart. My internet's acting up. I'm gonna restart my computer. If you want to go ahead and take over.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So this is what I want to run through. Let's just go ahead and take a look first at the content on the node so that everyone knows where they can, learn more about the Node Network, the Node.pro, and support us if you want to, because we put all of this information out at no cost to you. And so that means that we're kind of, dependent on anyone who wants to support our work here. So if you do want to support our work and you want to be the first person to buy some merch, this is actually going to be pretty cool. So if you want to take a look here, I am very interested myself in picking up one of these Node hats. I just haven't done it yet. I've been too busy building stuff out. So I'm going to get one of these and I'm going to start wearing it. I put them together in all sorts of different color combinations. So that's going to be pretty cool. This is the store, but the store has a hell of a lot more than just, these pieces of clothing and apparel. I really like the Saturday Night Fever shot glass. That's a lot of fun. And also all the books that I wrote. So, I wrote books on perpetual futures and beginner DeFi concepts, of course, liquidity provision and money markets. And the most important of them all is the mindset stuff. Because as a trader, you're going to have losses. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the uncertainty of knowing that you're going to lose? It's not like you're going to lose money, overall, but you're going to have losing trades. How do you deal with that? How do you prepare yourself psychologically for markets? So this is really, really valuable. I took a dozen books and used them to write the mindset book. So check that out. You can, pick this up on Amazon, or you can just buy it directly through the Shopify. The newsletter, I've been getting this sent to me. I've been getting the newsletter sent to me every day in the morning and in the afternoon. And I've just been making sure that the thing works and polishing it. So this is actually really, really valuable. And the brief doesn't quite look exactly like what the newsletter that gets sent to your email looks like. So this is still really valuable, though, whether it's the market snapshot or trading ranges or on-chain metrics or the ETF flows or derivative flows or different catalysts on the calendar. This is pretty cool, right? This one I just got working the other day, all of the catalysts. And then, what the hell was that?
That was applause.
This is actually working, Mike. And, I've been polishing this thing and just making sure that it works. And the big story is working now. All the quick hits, these are all working. And all of the citations are in here too. And then if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, you'll get the quick node take. And so in the morning at around 9:15 or 9:20 is when the newsletter email lands in my inbox. All I do is I scroll through so that I can get updated on what's going on in digital asset markets and in traditional markets, not just for Bitcoin and ETH and Sol, but I could set this up for any assets that I want to track. So, Mike, this newsletter it's almost there. It's almost ready to ship. It looks really, really good. And now it's literally just a matter of making sure that all of the emails get sent out properly. So, but it looks pretty good, man. What do you think?
Oh, I've been loving it. I pull it up each morning, just to check on it, and it actually a couple of times has given me ideas as far as news to cover on the show.
Right. And I was thinking that, at some point, maybe starting next week, we could start running the news just simply based on the newsletter. That could be pretty good, man, because, these these little articles right here are actually extremely valuable. TradFi runs for the exits as massive ETF outflows threaten Bitcoin support levels. Well, what were those outflows? Well, take a look at that. BTC ETFs minus $270 million over the last 24 hours. The Ethereum ETFs minus 207. And so where am I getting these data? I'm pulling these data from Farside. So this is directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So these data are legitimate and valid. And as you scroll down through, all of the data in this newsletter is real, legitimate, valid, real-time data.
I wouldn't mind pulling some of the news stories, but we give so much stuff away at no charge. I don't want to give away the one of the few things that we do make a little bit of money away for no charge. So
right. Well, so
covering it on the show, we're just giving it away each morning.
I think value for value. So if someone who's watching decides that he or she wants to support our work, then one great way to do it would be either to hop into the store and buy a hat, or to hop in and take a look at the newsletter. This is almost ready to rock and roll. So the store, the newsletter, and then our communities. So we've got two major communities. And then the third one that I'm adding is actually the paid YouTube meets. So basically, YouTube, Discord, and School, those are three no-cost communities that you can join. But if you want access to the private Google Meets that take place on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where you can ask questions live of me on a private Google Meet call for an hour. If you want to be able to do that, then either join the Discord or join it on YouTube, or you can join it through School. Any of these three ways are going to be working by the end of the weekend. So almost done with this. Now, if you want to take a look and maybe schedule a few minutes with me to find out if private coaching is going to work for you, then you can absolutely do that here. You can book a no-cost discovery call. Just go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you haven't bought any crypto yet and you're just learning. So your portfolio size is under 10K. and you definitely don't want to make any expensive mistakes. And then you hop in, you give your email address here, and you can book a discovery call. It's going to open up this booking page, and you'll be able to schedule a couple of minutes to talk to me about it. And you know what? If there's an opportunity for us to work together, great. If there's not, well, then what I would do is I would refer you over to the courses, because this is also no cost educational material. So if you want to speed up the pace at which you build a skill set, sometimes you need to put in some work yourself first. I think every time you probably need to put in some work yourself first. So hop on over here to the courses, take a look at the introduction to DeFi. You need to learn about what DeFi even is before you can really jump headfirst into it. So all of this educational material here, video content, podcasts, beautiful infographics. For me, I took all of these courses and I turned them into books, and all the books have nice pictures. So if you don't like reading, you can just, take a look at the pictures. And then of course, we've got all of our original programming. So 9 original shows. We go live 23 times a week, 23 broadcasts a week. That is pretty amazing, especially considering, Mike, that we just started this, the Node Network, we just started this 2 months ago. Like, not even. I think we're week 7 now. So it's come a long way. I've been building furiously in the background to like get this all up and running. And all this stuff is no cost to you, except for the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday private 1 hour member calls. So if you want to join those, that would be a great way to support the Node Network through Discord or YouTube. You can also do it through School, but we recommend Discord and YouTube. So this is our content calendar. Pretty darn cool. What do you think, Mike?
I like it.
Thanks, bro. It's going together, that's for sure.
Nice.
So what did you have on the agenda for today?
So first out the gate, we got major market shifter. So MicroStrategy pivots to Bitcoin sales. So it looks like MicroStrategy is potentially going to start selling Bitcoin to fund their STRC preferred stock dividends, according to CEO Michael Saylor. So this was yesterday that I was seeing this. So MicroStrategy is the world's largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. Their standard play has always been buying Bitcoin to hold indefinitely. This shift is potentially to potentially selling Bitcoin, even a fraction, to generate income for preferred stockholders, introduces a completely new dynamic for the corporate BTC treasuries and the macro market. So this, this could shake up the market. It could do nothing, but I kind of think that this was inevitable. I don't see where he could continually keep buying Bitcoin at the pace that he was buying it, because it really depended on people buying this STRC. That's kind of how he was funding buying more Bitcoin. So as that slows down, he still has to. The only thing that I find concerning, and I'm going to kick it to you, David, is that he said that he had 2 years worth of a treasury to pay the dividends for this STRC. So why is he selling Bitcoin is my question. So go ahead.
That's a great point. I was thinking the same thing, because I had been reading recently directly from Saylor that they had enough cash on hand to fund those dividend payments for just like what you just said, Mike, for the next 24 months. I was under the impression that they had plenty of cash on hand to be able to do that. But if that is not the case, what happens if MicroStrategy becomes a forced seller of Bitcoin on the way down? Like, if Bitcoin has another leg to the downside, another leg lower, if we're still in a Bitcoin bear market and Bitcoin makes another move to the downside, well, Saylor might become a more aggressive forced seller of Bitcoin to fund the STRC, those stretch dividend payments. Now,
wasn't there like a very defined level that he would be literally forced to sell to basically stay to stay basically to stay in business?
That could be the case. Something that I think about though, Mike, is what happens if STRC depegs. So that's what it's done in the past. I'm taking a look here at STRC. This is that Bitcoin credit instrument. And, if you understand how this thing works, um, it's basically like an interesting derivative that Mr. Saylor has been able to cook up. He's been able to build this interesting credit product. But the bottom line here is that number needs to go up. Bitcoin needs to appreciate in order for Saylor to not become a forced seller of Bitcoin. And, so STRC, it's this short duration, high yield credit instrument, and it yields around 11.5%, but it's paid monthly. And that target par value right here that we're taking a look at with STRC, the target value is 100. So it's supposed to be pegged to 100, just kind of like a stable coin, except that this is, a credit product wrapped in like something that you can buy through a traditional brokerage account. So this product, it needs to maintain its peg. If this thing ever depegs, then, Saylor could become a more aggressive forced seller of BTC to fund those dividend payments. So, what are the dividend bills? The company has $1.5 billion. I'm talking about MicroStrategy. It's got $1.5 billion in annual cash obligations. And so those are the dividend payments to STRC holders. And it's also got to pay interest on its convertible debt instruments. So it's got this cash runway, and then it's got this big Bitcoin stack. So if Strategy has $2.25 billion in cash reserves, that means they've got about 18 months of runway to pay dividends. But rather than diluting equity or deleting cash reserves to zero, the CEO of MicroStrategy, Phong Le, and executive chairman Michael Saylor, they said that they will tactically sell, quote unquote, tactically sell portions of their, nearly 820,000 Bitcoin stack. So that is something that we need to continue to watch. Now, I'm not convinced yet that STRC is a product that you just want to dump your corporate treasury into. Because let's say that you do that, right? Let's say that you're a corporate entity and you dump a portion of your corporate treasury into STRC, and then the thing depegs. So if you, take $1 and buy this STRC product and it's trading at par, which is 100, let's say, that's par. And then it depegs to 90 or it depegs to 95. Let's say it depegs to 95. Now, all of a sudden, you're down 5%. So that 11.5% annual dividend yield will not make up for, that depeg, especially if that depeg continues to the downside. So this is definitely an interesting product. A lot of people are excited about this, but the fact that Saylor has cash on hand and yet needs to sell further Bitcoin to continue to fund the dividend payment, that makes me a little bit uneasy, a little bit uneasy. So, I hope that this product can survive, but I don't know. Whenever you get that weird, uneasy feeling, there's a reason for that. Yeah, exactly.
You definitely don't want to do any knee jerk reactions, but it's definitely something to jot down a note about. Kind of like we did with Aave. It's with the all of a sudden you had the DAO falling apart, and then you had the devs leave, and then you had the risk team leave. It's just check check. Okay, this is starting. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's kind of like reading charts. You start to see these data points, and you start to see these patterns, and it's like what was that project we were talking about earlier this week where it was starting to show some of the same fractures with Aave, like they lost their DAO or their devs or something like that.
Which protocol are you referring to, Mike?
That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
Because earlier this week we were talking about a protocol or something, and their DAO was claiming the same thing, that they were basically just making unilateral. They controlled so much that they could just unilaterally do whatever it is they wanted to do, and it was pissing off the DAO. because basically then it's not decentralized. There's basically one entity or a small group of individuals that dictate what happens with the protocol. I forget which one it was.
I think that there's probably quite a few,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah. There was just one specifically that it was in the news. But anyway, so this is something that we definitely want to be keeping an eye on, because there's been some revelations lately about a lot of these chains and a lot of these protocols that were supposed to be decentralized, and we're starting to see a lot of very strong indications and facts that with things being frozen and USDC, USDT, on Tron, that these chains and protocols are not fully decentralized. They can freeze assets. They can lock assets to where you don't actually own them. So that's kind of why we were yesterday. David wanted to talk about Zcash and a lot of these privacy coins and things like that, because we might want to really start thinking about, if we ever get to a point where we're making some profits, that we start peeling those profits into some of these truly decentralized privacy based tokens, if we want to be sovereign. If we want to remove truly remove ourselves from the system, because I'm seeing it getting more draconian, not less. I mean, cash, at least we could hand cash to each other, as shitty as fiat is, at least we could hand cash to each other and it couldn't necessarily be tracked and things like that. With these digital currencies, they can see every wallet it touches, they can see everywhere it goes, they can see how it's spent, they can lock it, they can, it's, I don't know, it's basically the cell phone of currency.
What's so interesting about that, Mike, is so last night I was talking to some people around here on the beach. I was at a couple of the bars here on the beach and just talking to random strangers. And when people ask me what I do, I'm like, oh, I'm a YouTuber, right? I'm in the crypto space. I'm a YouTuber, and they ask me, okay, well, what does that actually mean, like a YouTuber in crypto? And I tell them, well, I talk about sovereignty.
I pay money to work.
I mean, for now, that won't be the case for much longer.
Yeah.
But I always say, well, I talk a lot about sovereignty and self-responsibility, and these girls were like, "Huh, sovereignty?" As they're paying for something with a credit card. It's like, what does sovereignty mean? I don't think that most people really understand what that word even really means.
No.
So it's just kind of interesting to me that many people, it seems, many people are willing to just remain tax slaves without really understanding that, hey, you could take your financial future into your own hands and become truly sovereign if only you could build the right skill set. That's all you need to do. It's just a matter of education. That's really all it is. But you got to want it.
Education is why they are the way that you're explaining. It's the the education. Our education system is what's programmed them to think that all of this is normal, that this is the way it's supposed to be. And I mean, the fact that they don't know, when you said sovereign, just the word sovereign, the fact that they don't know what that is very and they're adults, is very telling.
Yeah, it really is. If you think that sovereignty is paying for drinks with a credit card, I'm sorry, but you're mistaken. That is not sovereignty. So
sovereignty is distilling your own spirits to make your drink.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That would be a lot of fun, actually.
There's a guy up here that actually does that. He makes moonshine, and he's actually looking at doing it commercially. Like starting up his own distillery. So it's definitely an art, but it's something I've always thought about doing. I've always wanted to do it, but the thing is like I would want to age it for like an obscene amount of time. And I don't know if I could wait that long before I drank it. So,
so you want to age it in like wooden casks or barrels?
Like get like old wine. Like there's a winery close to here. Maybe get hold of like one or two of their old, big wooden barrels, like oak barrels. toast the inside of it, and that wine is soaked into that wood, over the years. And so it'd have like a little bit of a wine flavor, a little bit of a toasted flavor, and just let it soak in there, for like 20, 30 years.
I mean, 20 or 30 years, that sounds like that would be some amazingly good alcohol at the end of the day,
Yes.
for sure. It would
Yeah.
probably taste amazing and smell great too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. No, and it's yeah, anyway. All right. So let's go into infrastructure. Let's see. AI and visibility. AI cites crypto exchanges. So Coinbase and Kraken dominate 22% of all AI generated citations regarding cryptocurrency. This is a new critical metric for brand dominance in 2026 as users increasingly search via large language models or LLMs like ChatGPT rather than traditional search engines. The data reveals that brands have successfully integrated their knowledge base and data into the AI training loop. Coinbase and Kraken are currently winning the war for AI mindshare. Um, let's see. So I've been like Coinbase has been working towards this. Coinbase is love them or hate them. They're really good at forward leaning with a lot of the innovations in crypto, being able to spot and front run a lot of the narratives and a lot of the directions that this technology is going. And a perfect example is X402. They were one of the first to launch. They saw a pain point and they addressed it almost before everybody else. And what X402 does is it fully enables AI agents to operate in crypto with trading, with DeFi, with all these things, because before an AI couldn't navigate paywalls. It couldn't make transactions. And so what X402 did is gave it the ability that once you built out a bot or you built out an AI agent and told it, hey, I want you to go out there and do interest rate arbitrage, or and gave it all of its guidelines, or I want you to look for opportunities, to short, Bitcoin or whatever. Then now you can give it the ability to where it can actually put in those trades without you. Whereas before it could just give you advice. It could just say, hey, at this level, I would set an entry at this level and a stop loss here. It be able to kind of advise you. Now it can execute. So Coinbase, and it looks like Kraken as well, is definitely steeped in this. Mamo is one that our community invested in. It's heavily down. I still have my small bag of it from an airdrop, but it was one that was really interesting because you could deposit, and I'm earning free Bitcoin. I deposited it there, and all the yield that I earn is paid to me in Bitcoin. And it was like 10 or 20% or something like that. And it's just sitting there, just slowly racking up free Bitcoin. It's just one of my Bitcoin plays, kind of like my Coinbase card. Every purchase I make with my Coinbase card, I made like 2, 3, 4%, back in Bitcoin at the current price. So in the future, maybe that $5 that I got from that purchase is going to be worth $20 because, I think I'm up to about like $500 in the past couple of months in free Bitcoin, just making purchases that I otherwise would just make. So kind of my point, I kind of got off track a little bit, but my point is that AI is definitely going to be, I mean, the internet, what everybody said it was a fad. At first, AI, kind of everybody was saying that it was a fad because, I mean, you saw some of the images where, Will Smith was eating spaghetti and his face was all contorted. And, people are like, this is garbage. Like, this is never going to catch on. Now, you can't even tell between what's real and what's AI. I mean, it's insane. Imagine like another, couple of years, what AI is going to be like. I mean, potentially we're going to have AI hosts on this show where we have, where we don't even have to do the show. We just have AI hosts that host it for us. I mean, that's where it's going. But David, sorry, I've ranted for a while. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
So, something that comes to mind, Mike, as you were talking about, the internet back in the day. Here, let me see if I can share. Let me share my screen. I want to just take a look at this piece of video content just real quick. because this is kind of interesting. Do you remember this? Do you remember
Millions
this
of
here, Mike?
Americans own a personal computer. If
remember
you're
this
one
guy?
of them, you can now glimpse the future with nothing more than a
This is
modem, a phone line, $1 a month.
Something like that.
You remember this piece of video content, Mike? Have you seen this one?
Oh no, I probably watched it, but
Oh my God.
I remember like the email. What is an email?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, I mean, I'm about to turn 52, so I mean, I definitely remember pre cell phone, pre internet, pre home computer, all of that. And I remember that everybody was laughing at the internet. You're like, what could this even be used for? They're like, why would somebody use the internet? Why not just go to the library? If you're because the first 1.0 internet was read only, and you didn't have Google or search engines, so you had to know the URL, and it wasn't a simple .com. It was a long string of it looked like a wallet address almost, and you had to know exactly where you were going. And so, I mean, people were like, this is not going to be used for anything. And then AOL came out, America Online, and, you had the dial up modem where, wiki, wee, wee, wee. And then if you were trying to, got to, 2.0, where you could actually download things and whatnot. If somebody picked up the phone in the house to try to make a phone call, they interrupted the connection and you'd have to start over. So it was people just laughed at it. They thought it was a joke, but I mean, look at it now. Same
I
thing with
remember.
crypto. How many people have laughed at you for investing in crypto?
If anyone's ever laughed at me for investing in crypto, I probably haven't maintained a relationship with that person for very long, you know. But I definitely remember, back in the early '90s, growing up as a kid, using those, old. Remember the Mac clones, those cloned Macintosh machines? They were running Mac OS or Mac software, Apple Macintosh back in the day, but they were cloned hardware with the dial-up connections. So I definitely remember that. And something that I think about often is, there were browser wars, there was the operating system wars, and I think what we're seeing today is two battles playing out at the same time. We've got blockchain wars, where you've got all these different layer ones competing for users, basically. And then you've also got these models, these AI models. So I think we've got the model wars and we've got the blockchain wars going on right now. I think it might end up being a situation where winner take most. I think that's what's going to end up happening here.
Well, that's what happened
Yeah.
before. With the .coms, it happened with the search engines, it happened with the operating systems. The cell phones. There seems like that there's always two or three that are always battling for market share. And I think you're right. I think that's what it's going to be with when it comes to crypto as well. Is over time there's going to I think there's going to be a mass culling right off the bat. Where just the bullshit is going to just freaking drop off the face of the earth, and then
Yeah.
there's going to be maybe like 5%, if that survive that, and they're going to be battling it out. And I think that there's just going to be some clear winners that are just going to rise to the top. And and occasionally you'll see somebody come out of nowhere, kind of like Google did. Yahoo was the 800-pound gorilla, and Google came along. Yahoo had a chance to buy Google, passed, and Google ended up overtaking them. I mean, when was the last time you used Yahoo? Ellie in the chat mentioned Ask Jeeves. I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard anybody talking about Ask Jeeves, and it was a big deal there for a minute. So I think it's going to be the same thing with crypto. I think that there's going to be a clear superior product. And Canton kind of looks like it's one of those as far as adoption. Ethereum, love it or hate it, it has plenty of flaws, but it's being adopted in mass. Bitcoin, so I just I'm constantly analyzing the markets and trying to do my best to identify the ones that are outperforming. And I don't just mean by price. Like I almost ignore price. I'm looking at like utility, adoption, if they're generating fees, the tokenomics we always talk about, because I don't care how great the technology is or how profitable the company is. If I'm going to buy the token, I want to know that somehow, potentially, those profits make their way back to me as a token holder. Because I'm not looking to fund their growth of their company, just because I'm a fan of their technology.
I agree. And, here's something else I think we need to think about here. It used to be that when you went to go search for a piece of information, you would head over to Google and you would scan the 10 blue links, those first 10. And usually you would click on one of the first two.
Yeah.
But now we've got something known as generative engine optimization. Instead of search engine optimization, we've got generative engine optimization. We've also got answer engine optimization. So instead of SEO, now it's GEO and AEO, because users are searching for websites and data from within these large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and Claude, I call them Cletus, et cetera, et cetera. All of these different models, people are searching for information through the models. And so if you are a builder in the digital asset space, in the crypto space, like we are, and you want to make sure that your information makes it to users who are searching for products using these models, well, you've got to first make sure that you feed that information as a builder. You've got to feed it to these models. And the way that you do that is through your sitemap. So your sitemap has to be built in such a way that these models can easily search through and find relevant information. So
basically, they have these automatic crawlers that index things, and so the cleaner your sitemap is, and the easier that it's able to crawl your site, and index certain points, the better optimization you're going to have.
Yep. So it's the sitemap, it's the schema, it's entity mapping. All of these things together allow builders to effectively do geo or generative engine optimization. So this is the future. You've got to be able to optimize your website for these LLM models. Otherwise, people won't be able to find information about you. So,
I know very rarely do I use Google anymore. I mean, I'm almost always using Gemini or Grok or something like that. Just because I put something in Google, like if I was looking for news for the show or something like that, it would be this time-consuming, arduous task of typing in today's hot crypto news or something like that, and I'd have to go through each website and find each article and stuff like that. With AI, I mean, I can just say give me the hot and trending news for the day. It pops up with a bunch of stuff, and then all I have to do is just go to the links that it gives me and read about it, so I'm knowledgeable about it, and and then maybe check it against a couple of other sources just to make sure it's credible. Much quicker process than before, because I mean, it used to take me hours a day to get ready for one show. Like when me and Jeff first started, DeFi crypto and airdrops. I mean, or even further back when I was doing bullshit and bourbon. I mean, I would sit for 4, 5, 6 hours a day researching a topic that I wanted to talk about, just so I could be knowledgeable on it and ensure that the information I was giving was true and accurate. So, now with AI, I mean, I can have an outline of what I want to talk about, and all I have to do is just fact check it. And that's, relatively quick. So, no, I can't wait until it's like fully conversational, to where I can just, be making my morning tea and be talking to the AI across the room and just say, hey, can you put together, my morning package, of the title, description, thumbnail for the show, maybe pull up some key news and start reading it to me and educate me on each of the topics, and I can just be doing stuff, and multitasking and passively listening to it and learning about what we're going to talk about on the show. I mean, that would be fucking amazing.
You know what else is cool, Mike? All of the pieces of video content that I create for the second half of each of our shows every day,
Yeah.
those pieces of video content, they're pretty good. But imagine being able to produce a piece of video content more similar to something like, have you seen Spencer Pratt's ads for becoming mayor of LA. The
Yeah.
advertisements, oh man. So he's put out some amazing pieces of AI generated video content. Those are basically his campaign ads. They
Yeah.
are very, very good. And they're AI generated. Imagine being able to use these models to create lifelike video content to educate yourself on any topic. I think that that's where we're headed. And I'm really looking forward to it.
I would just love for it to get to the point to where, like, if we have, like, the node house, like we've talked about, that basically AI are the hosts, for, all the second half content, the first half content, and then we just have a producer, like, maybe it's something that I do, while you take care of the education part. I'll just be the producer, and I just monitor everything and make sure that the information that it's generating and putting out is accurate, and things like that. And just do what a producer usually does. Make sure that everything runs smoothly. That would be fucking badass. If basically we just beefed up what you're already building with the AI agents, doing the books and doing the social media. And if we had basically just a whole company of AI employees that did every aspect of the business, and we just managed it.
Exactly. And we've already got a couple of AI agent employees now. We've got Steven Socials that helps us with all of the posting of clips and shorts, chopping up video content. And we've got, Bob in accounting, which over the weekend, I'm going to be going on GitHub, and I'm going to find a couple of open source libraries, a couple of open source repos that will allow us to take that Bob in accounting agent and make it a real CFO that's going to basically reconcile our books daily. Imagine daily reconciliation of your books. That is pretty darn cool. And then, one of the other agents that we've got in the works here is our broadcasting agent. So I've been working to, basically what I did is I found a Suno wrapper. So Suno is this music generation model. And what I did is I found a wrapper that allows me to programmatically call in using the command line and create music programmatically. So I can create many, many, many musical tracks all at once. If I wanted to create 50, I certainly could. And then I can stitch them all together and use this broadcasting agent to then turn that into a radio station on YouTube. So for me, as I'm working, there are certain types of music that I really like to listen to because for whatever reason, it gets my brain into like a different state where I can sit and work for hours.
Dude, it's proven that like listening to classical music, it's proven to improve productivity. Vibrations, certain vibrations. It's they've done a bunch of studies. I mean, it's definitely a thing. I mean, we're made of what 70% water. I mean, just that that has to react with with sound. I mean, it has to.
Yeah, it does. I don't know exactly what it is, but there are certain genres of music that if I'm listening to them as I work, it will get my brain into like this deep focus state.
Oh, dude, when I work out, it's I love like heavy, hard music. Something that gets me pumped up. If I'm skiing, I love listening to reggae. And like punk and ska and stuff like that. If I'm doing something creative, I like classical, old school classical music. If I'm working and trying to be creative, I like not anything hard or harsh. I just like something kind of ambient, soothing in the background that just is almost like a white noise. And but it's not distracting. Like I don't want a bunch of vocals. I don't want a bunch of heavy beats or anything like that. I just want like this calm, peaceful music that just kind of envelops me so that I can block out everything and just focus. So no, I totally get it. I mean, yeah, depending on what I'm doing, and my mood is definitely this type of music. When I'm out doing chores, I love listening to country music, and bluegrass and blues and stuff like that.
Yeah, man. So for me, there are, I really like lo-fi. I like ambient. I like lo-fi ambient music. I really like house and dubstep and stuff like that. It does something to like get my brain into a certain state. And when I'm in that state, people call it flow state. But when I get into that state, I can, focus on a task for hours on end until I complete that task. It really does help. And so, almost selfishly, I've been building out all of this music so that I have music that I want to listen to, during the day.
I
So
thought it was funny. We actually got a comment on one of our shorts where I think it was me and Jeff were talking about what you're building, and somebody's like made a comment about that's fake music, and I'm like, what's fake music? He's like, well, it's not made by a human, or it's sampled off of actual music. I'm like, regular music is sampled off of musical notes. It's basically they're just mixing together in different order the same notes. It's all music, if you think about it, is sampled. It's just a matter of who puts it together, who organizes it. That's the creativity part of it. And what's the difference between a human doing it and a computer doing it? It's I don't understand that whole real and fake music narrative. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I'll tell you one thing that I've been trying to figure out how to do properly is master the music. So, it's one thing to be able to programmatically create it, using the command line or any other way. But after you've created it, a lot of people prefer like small imperfections in the music. It makes it sound more human. And so I built this entire software program that masters these AI tracks. So all it does is it strips apart the track into its component pieces and then changes them a little bit to make when it recombines them together to master it, it makes it sound a little bit less perfect, which makes it sound more human. And for whatever reason, I think we like that. Human beings like less perfect music. So it's been really difficult to do that, though. And in the absence of having some imperfections in the music, I still think it's extremely valuable. So anyone who wants to talk shit about AI music just because it's not made by a human, well, okay. But, I like what gets me into a flow state.
What's the difference between that and freaking I forget what it's called, but basically every freaking bit of music that's out there now, it's run through soundboards and they tweak the shit out of it. I mean, what's the difference?
I couldn't tell you, um, I really don't see that much of a difference. So, for me, it's the effect.
Now, back in the day, like Janis Joplin and all of them, Barry White, where it was just a microphone and them playing an instrument, or them just singing, and there was no auto tune. That's what I'm thinking of. There was no auto tune to now that was art. The people these days, they could take me and my shitty voice and I could sing and they could tweak it up to make it sound good. Now it's just all about image. It's all about who they can, who looks good. It's not about, because most of the freaking, music artists back in the day, they were ugly as shit. Like Janis Joplin was ugly as shit, but her voice was amazing. Barry White was not sexy at all, but his voice, it was just fucking amazing. That first MTV video killed the radio star. Most people, other than album covers, really didn't know what a lot of these artists look like. And so, it's again, it didn't matter what you look like. Now it's all about looks. It doesn't matter what you sound like.
Yeah, well, some people have faces made for radio.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a face made for podcasts. All right. Well, so the last story I got for the last 10 minutes before we do go into the deep dives, Aave overhauls security. So Aave Labs introduces a new listing standards at Consensus Miami focused on cybersecurity to heal the 293 million kelp DAO wound. So this is the primary story in DeFi today, following the staggering almost 300 million exploit of kelp DAO. The largest DeFi protocol, Aave is completely rewriting its risk and listing playbook. At the Consensus Miami conference, they are outlining a security-first strategy that prioritizes robust smart contracts over immediate protocol liquidity, a massive statement for the future of DeFi maturity. So David has been talking about this for a while, since we started reporting on this, and even before, the exploit and things like that, was the potential for basically what happened. It's something that we covered about 2 weeks before the exploit, where we were talking about that, the issues with the pooled liquidity. We talked about the issues with losing their risk team. A lot of people out there on X and stuff like that were giving me a lot of heat, because they were like, oh, you're just spreading FUD, you're just spreading FUD. And it's like, no, I'm just pointing out facts. It is not a good look, as far as marketing, and it's not a good look as far as security when you lose your dev team, your risk team, and your DAO. I mean, it's just those things. You're losing the decentralized aspect of what you're supposed to be, because you're not a DAO. I mean, if you lose your DAO and it's basically, the Aave company and a couple of other key people making blanket decisions about what's going to happen with the protocol, it's not a DAO. Stop calling it a DAO. If you lose your risk team, it's like, yes, another risk team stepped in, but you lost your risk team that has been managing everything, and there is no, handoff. That's a bad thing. If you lose your dev team that developed your V3 and your V4, and they just basically walk off the job, that's not a good thing. So, pointing out facts is not FUD. Pointing out facts is data. It's logic. It's being a responsible investor. FUD is just talking shit about something because you don't like it. It's your opinion. There's no data to support it. So we need to get out of this mindset of just because something is said that you don't like, it doesn't mean it's FUD. But back to the point, I mean, this is something that you were talking about the other day, that there is a very steep hill that Aave is going to have to climb to rebuild their image, as the leading protocol, borrowing and lending protocol. So where do you see this going, David?
Aave's fucked. I mean, reputation takes years to build. And Aave built a stellar reputation as the DeFi bank. And they built that reputation over the course of years and years. And then, literally in an instant, that reputation is gone. And I just don't see how institutions are going to be able to allocate real capital to the Aave protocol in light of this exploit. And the way it's been handled so far, it's basically been the first bailout in DeFi. It's a DeFi bailout. That's what's happened. But users have not been bailed out yet. The protocols are getting bailed out, but the users aren't. And so let that sink in for a second. How does that make you feel if you're a user and you're on one of these EVM chain layer 2s on Aave and you've got ETH deposited on an EVM chain layer 2, like Base? So this is the market that we're looking at now. This is the Base chain market over on Aave V3. It was a 2-point-something billion dollar market up until that layer 0 RS ETH exploit. Now, if we scroll down and we take a look at the frozen and paused markets, the biggest, or maybe not the biggest, but one of the most important markets on these layer 2s, the Ethereum market, it's still frozen. Mike, when did this exploit happen? Can you remind me? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
Yeah. No, it was like, I think it was coming on 3 weeks ago.
Dude, like, imagine you are a depositor in the Ethereum markets on these EVM chain layer 2s. Like, if we can just take a look at a couple of them, Base or Arbitrum or Mantle, any of these. If you are a depositor, you're frozen right now. And so imagine if you need that liquidity to be able to pay your bills or whatever you need to be able to use it for, it's frozen.
You make your living off of your DeFi. I mean, imagine if your life savings, if we wouldn't have done that, dude, if we wouldn't have done that deep dive and had you make that conscious decision to yank your liquidity a couple of days before the exploit, I mean, dude, that would have been. I can only imagine what that would have done to you. So, I mean, how many other people are out there like that? That are they do this for their livelihood. I mean, I can only imagine.
Well, look, all I can say is that if I had not removed my liquidity from Aave prior to the exploit, as a result of the deep dive research that we produced, saying, hey, it's probably a good idea to exit Aave and just sit
For a
because the
minute.
risk yeah, but the risk was not worth the compensation.
Yeah, the
So
juice
if
isn't
I'm
worth the squeeze.
exactly, so if
What were
I'm
you
over
making?
here,
It was like 2%, if I remember right. It was
like,
like 2 or
dude,
3%.
barely, barely. So like if you're on a layer two and you've got, stables deposited on Aave and you got to ask yourself this question. If you're depositing stables on Aave on a layer two,
Yeah,
which we all now know, if
can be
these markets
frozen and yeah,
can be frozen, if utilization goes to 100% and you've got some type of interest rate arbitrage play running, then you could end up getting stuck in a highly unprofitable trade without the ability to exit. And so if you're earning 3.44% on your USDC, that is US Treasury. That's not even Treasury yield, man.
no,
That's like 100 basis points below Treasury yield.
yeah.
So if you're not even getting paid Treasury type yields,
Why are you doing it?
why would you do it? Like, because this is not
It's added risk with no added reward.
right. You've got to get compensated.
It's like rob me, daddy.
It just doesn't make any
it's like
sense.
a financial fetish. It's it's
It doesn't make any sense at all because, like, okay, you've got smart contract risk, you've got counterparty risk, and now we also know on Aave, the architecture of Aave v3, you've got this incredible level of shared risk in this vault architecture. That shared pool architecture on Aave v3 exposes you to a lot of risk, and that risk could come from an unexpected area. So, for example, imagine if we take a look at, maybe, well, let's just take a look at this, right? Imagine on the Arbitrum market, this is another EVM chain layer two. We scroll down and we take a look at the frozen markets. There's ETH. You got $200 million in frozen ETH in the ETH market on Arbitrum right now. Imagine if WBTC, another $200 million over here, WBTC is not Bitcoin. It is a derivative of Bitcoin. And you've got to understand what this product is. So it's issued by BitGo. You've got counterparty risk with the custodian, BitGo. You've got smart contract risk with the custodian and their smart contract. You've also got smart contract risk on Aave, and you've got that pooled architecture risk on Aave. So if there's some type of problem with your WBTC, you're stuck. So is it worth it, number one, to swap your stables into WBTC? And if you do that, does it then make sense to deposit your WBTC on Aave for a paltry 0.05%?
fuck no.
I don't think that makes any sense at all. I would prefer just to hold spot Bitcoin and earn zero yield with none of that risk. That's what I would prefer to do.
Or
And so
start looking at things like I know I don't know how much they've launched yet. I need to go check it out. But like Amboss, where it's native Bitcoin, on Lightning layer two. But I mean, that is where I would be, and do your own research. But that's where I would be putting my Bitcoin, because everywhere I've looked in DeFi, you can't earn shit on just single sided loaning of Bitcoin. It's usually less than 1%.
yeah, it usually is. Usually it's much less than 1%.
Yeah,
And the thing for me is, if you're going to take on all sorts of different risks, you've got smart contract risk, you've got custodial risk, you've got counterparty risk, you've got the architecture risk. That's like an economic risk.
there better be solid upside.
You've got to get compensated for taking that risk, because if you're not, then what's the point? So if I'm a big institution and I've got tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars that I need to allocate in DeFi, and I want to do that on a money market. Well, in light of the exploit of Layer Zero and KelpDAO, and what happened to Aave's pooled architecture model as a result of that exploit, well, there's no way in hell that I'm going to start allocating money over to Aave again, because I know that my funds are not really safe and I'm not getting paid enough to take that risk.
No.
So where is this liquidity going to flow? If it's not going to be on Aave, where's it going to go?
I think part of it's going to go to Morpho.
Morpho for sure. Another protocol that I quite like is Fluid. This is another one of these money markets.
Is that on Hyperliquid?
So Fluid is an EVM chain protocol. It is not necessarily directly on the Hyperliquid layer 1 or the Hyper EVM.
I just assumed it was called Fluid, that maybe it was on Hyperliquid.
Yeah. So Fluid is its own protocol. So if we just take a look at Fluid here, the interesting thing about Fluid is that these are almost more like a combination of a liquidity pool and a money market vault. It's a really interesting architecture here.
Are we doing a deep dive on it today?
Not today. So what I want to do today is I want to run through 3 protocols that I'm sure we all think that we're familiar with a little bit. I want to run through and learn about Sui. I want to learn about Avalanche, and I want to learn about Chainlink. Those are the 3 protocols that I want to run through today because...
All right, hold on one sec. Give those to me again, because while you get started, I'm going to post about this. So you said Sui?
Yep, we're going to take a look at Sui. We're going to take a look at Chainlink. And then if we've got time, we're going to take a look at Avalanche. So those are the 3 that I want to take a look at today because,
you go ahead and take the lead. I'm going to actually jump on social media and put out that we're going to be doing these deep dives for anybody interested. And maybe
Awesome.
we can even get a member of the team of some of these to pop in the chat.
I think that'd be great. So what I was thinking about earlier this morning was, as I go through the top 100, coins here, I'm over on CoinMarketCap. And as I was just running through these top 100 coins, I realized, hey, you know what? I know that a lot of these protocols have been upgrading their tokenomics recently. And so if they're upgrading their tokenomics and we're still in a Bitcoin bear market, well, which of these protocol coins or tokens is most likely to really rip during that next bull market? I'm thinking during the bear, where do I want to be allocating my liquidity when we reach some sort of a trough? Now, I don't think that we've reached a trough in Bitcoin yet, but I'm definitely open to being proven wrong. And so when I take a look at this chart of BTC, I have to view this in light of what the NASDAQ is doing, because stocks have literally been going straight up. And so you've got to respect this pump, man. Like, this is something else right here. And, look, in the early 90s, you
always have to respect a respectable pump.
You got to respect it, man, because
hard pump.
Like, dude, in the late 90s, I was a kid. I wasn't trading in 1999 and 2000 and 2001. Like, I wasn't a trader. I was 9 years old. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't remember what it was like during the, that 2000 pump. I don't remember that. I remember.
I remember like years old.
Dude, I remember, 2008. I remember 2009. I remember, 2018, Volmageddon. I remember those events after 2008. But in 2000, I was a child, dude. So, like, I wasn't trading. But I think that this is really important here. So there's a couple of things that make me think that maybe Bitcoin has found some type of a trough. Number one, this AI trade is just going gangbusters. Number two, ISM is firmly in expansionary territory above 50. And number three, the NASDAQ is going up only. So if stocks are in up-only mode and ISM is expanding and the private sector is adding jobs, even with all of the layoffs as a result of AI, well, it makes me think that what could possibly derail this? Well, whatever goes up eventually must come down, and this is straight up. So, whenever this thing decides that it wants to correct, it's likely going to be very sharp and violent to the downside. But it's not happening. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't want to step in front of this train and get short. Not for stocks, not for stocks anyway. There's no
Yeah.
way that I can call a top. Like, I don't have a crystal ball. No one does. So I can't step in and say, hey, this is the top. I'm getting short stocks here. Can't do it. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, if stocks are in up only mode, and even the Russell, these are more interest rate sensitive items. Even the Russell has basically just been going up only. But if stocks are in up only mode and the ISM is expanding, those two things in the past have been positively correlated with Bitcoin number go up. So that makes me think, well, I really need to be careful getting short BTC here, because if Bitcoin rips above this 200-day moving average and makes a move up to 98K before this fall, before the fall, then I'm talking about, September, October, November. If Bitcoin is up at 98K before September, then that 4-year cycle for Bitcoin is over. But we're not there yet. And so, yeah, that's just something that's been coming to mind for me is, what is the direction of these assets over the next couple of months? What could potentially derail, a rally like this? And it's got to be some type of exogenous shock. It would have to be something, I think, to do with the rates markets, yields on treasuries, or maybe it could be something to do with crude oil and interest rate, expectations going up as a result of inflation expectations going up. But it seems as though the only thing that matters is liquidity. And as long as liquidity is in expansionary territory and people are just buying stocks hand over fist, it makes it really difficult for me to confidently get short digital assets, even though I still believe in that Bitcoin cycle. It makes me think, okay, well, it's really tough to get short and stay short. But man, I still think that BTC is likely to be down here at 50K at some point over the summer. That's really what I'm thinking. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. No one does. And so I'm just thinking to myself, well, where do we go from here? Where do markets go from here? And so earlier today, I wanted to just perform some deep dive analysis on a handful of protocols that I think have been upgrading their tokenomics. Because if I'm going to be allocating my precious capital to some altcoins, I really want to make sure that I'm allocating to only the highest quality alts. So, of course, Bitcoin number one, but there are some interesting alts here if we go down the list. And so I wanted to deep dive into the Chainlink tokenomics. I wanted to take a look here at AVAX, the Avalanche tokenomics, and SUI, the SUI tokenomics. I think that those potentially are three protocols that I could allocate to. And, we were taking a look at TON yesterday a little bit. So that's another potential protocol or coin that I might allocate to. So I was just thinking that over the next couple of weeks, we could probably run through and do deep dive research on the most interesting protocol coins here in the top 100. Because if I scroll down this list, there's a lot of coins here that, something like World Liberty Financial, I wouldn't touch with your money. You know what I mean? I would never touch this thing because we've done deep dive research on it. And I don't know what this thing does still. Even after the deep dive research.
I'll tell you exactly what it does is it makes Trump and his family and his buddies rich.
And I think that that's gross. To be completely honest, I think that
Absolutely.
as much as I like what President Trump is doing, I think that what he's done personally with his family business in crypto is pretty gross.
Yeah.
It looks like a scam. World Liberty Financial looks like some type of scam. just like
Well,
the Trump meme coin.
another one that we talked about, and almost immediately after that, they started, basically, freezing wallets, and they started, selling off and like unlocking, a token are supposed to be locked for a long period of time, and it's just basically they just do whatever the hell they want with the token.
Yeah. And, but here's the thing though, plus 37% over the last 7 days. You take a look at,
Everything can be traded. I mean, meme coins that are total shit can be traded. XRP, that we always talk about. It can be traded short term, absolutely. Is it
yeah.
something I'm going to buy? No. Is it something I'm going to hold long term? Absolutely fucking not.
Here's another protocol that we might take a look at over the next couple of days here. Near protocol. So, a lot of people like to say that Near protocol is some sort of AI play. And although it could be, I just don't know enough about it to be able to say that, hey, yeah, this is a great AI play. But when I take a look at the chart, this makes me think that, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and zoom out on this chart a little bit. If Near pushes above trendline resistance at $2.10 and it's able to break out, dude, well, this token could really run, man. It's sitting at $1.55 right now. And if we just go ahead and zoom in a little bit, we can see those levels of resistance. And as of right now today, Near is sitting at its 200-day moving average. We get a breakout, a convincing breakout above the 200-day SMA, and then we're headed up here to $1.90. So, these alts are actually starting to run a little bit. Now, you've got to ask yourself, is this a rip your face off bear market rally? Is that what we're seeing here before some type of a dump? Is that what's going on? Or are we witnessing the start of the next bull? I mean, is that what we're witnessing? It remains to be determined, but we can take a look down the list. There's a lot of altcoins that are ripping and running. We take a look at something like Pendle. Pendle has really been able to run, off of that 98-cent low, trading today for $2.08. That's more than a double. And that's more than a double over just the last 4 weeks. So there's a lot of tokens that are running here, and now that Pendle is up above that 200-day moving average, the next level of resistance comes in at $2.40. So this thing has plenty of room to the upside if it wants to continue to run. You get above $2.40, and then, basically we've got to start talking about $4 or $5 on this.
Dude, like two that are kind of quietly moving is Plume. I mean, it's up 25% in the past 7 days. And that Venice token, that VVV, it's up 50% in the past 7 days.
So, Mike, I've seen so many patterns that look like Plume where,
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying it's going to pump or anything, but
no. This looks good. This actually looks good because I've seen, so here's the thing. I've seen so many charts that look like this, but this down here, this looks like it could be accumulation. I would need volume on the chart to be able to discern whether this is accumulation or not. You would be looking for increasing volume on the buys on the way down. You'd be looking for increasing volume on the buys to tell you that this is an accumulation phase. Now, let's say that it is, just for the sake of argument.
Okay.
Well, this thing at 1.4 cents, it could rip up to 2 cents. That's the 200-day moving average. You get above that 200-day moving average, and if I just go ahead and throw down a horizontal, like right there. So you've got, this is called a confluence. When you have two pieces of analysis that tell you the same thing. You've got
the 200 EMA and that level of
resistance. Right. So you got the 200-day SMA, the simple moving average right here. This is that SMA. That's the 200-day. And then you've got the horizontal. So you've got two levels of resistance. Now, if Plume is able to make it up
convergence,
right? dude, but
all kneel before the great convergence.
right? I mean, dude, so here's the thing. Like you see Plume up here at $2 or 2.3 cents.
Hell yeah, $2.
I didn't say $2. I meant to say 2.3 cents.
Man, I would love to see you some Plume at $2.
Hey man,
I'd be cashing out quick.
well, hey, you see this thing up at 2.3 cents, and then all of a sudden, there's no resistance. This thing could rip. I mean, really, really run. And we're starting to see a lot of alts put in some interesting moves. This is starting to remind me of
And
what
it's
it
not like
was like.
nothing is it's not like nothing is going on with Plume. I mean, that Nest protocol, just the institutional use of that, and its connection, its integration with Morpho and Base and a bunch of other, I think Solana as well. And so I mean, that's probably the only really good thing of note. But Plume, those of you that don't know, is a kind of like how Canton is purpose built for institutions. Plume is purpose built for RWAs. It's an purpose built RWA chain for different protocols that handle real world assets. So we've done deep dives on it if you want to check them out. But go ahead. Sorry.
So Mike, check this out. This is Ondo. Okay, here's Ondo, and this thing above the 200-day moving average now. And take a look at this breakout.
It's because I sold it. You're welcome.
That's how it always happens. That's what always happens, man.
Oh yeah.
So if you've got something like Ondo ripping 20 plus 26% today, and these alts, these things can really run, man. So now that it's broken out above trendline resistance and above that 200-day moving average, where's the next level of resistance for Ondo? Not until we get up here at $1.12. So, there's plenty of room for this altcoin Ondo to run. We take a look at another alt that has really been beaten down, Eigen. I mean, dude, this thing has done nothing but down only, basically since December of 2024. So down only. But now that it's plus 12% on the session so far today, we could start talking about that 200-day SMA. That's 38 cents. So trading for 22 cents, the rally up to 38 cents, that's where resistance comes into that 200-day SMA. Still plenty of room for this to run. You take a look at something like Jupe, Jupiter's token, breaking out above the 200-day moving average. And if we just go ahead and zoom out here a little ways and grab some trend line resistance and throw it down like so, well, now that we've broken out above that 200-day SMA, you would start to look at maybe 69 cents or 57 cents. One of these two levels would be the next level of resistance on the upside, but you've also got this trend line resistance on the upside. So if this thing is able to rip up to trend line resistance, that would tell me that if alts continue to rip like this, it would likely mean that Bitcoin is holding on to its gains and not breaking down. The moment that Bitcoin actually breaks down, those alts are going to get slaughtered. But it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. And the wealth effect in the stock market, I think that you might see some capital rotate out of stocks into some of these high beta. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, historically, there's a case for that. Where once people make a bunch of money in the markets and they think it's going to roll over, they move their liquidity into Bitcoin and then into Ethereum and then into alts, and there's a pattern.
Yeah, and we could start to see a more aggressive rotation into those altcoins. I think it's something like $10 trillion in wealth has been created just over the last 5 weeks in equities. I mean, an amazing amount of wealth has been created. And so if even a small amount of that rotates into digital assets, then you could really see these things run. So
and the total market cap for crypto is only 2.66 trillion.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely 10x from here. I think it's likely to. So I want to take a look here at total 3 minus USDT divided by BTC. This is one of Ben Cowan's favorite charts to show because
Carried
it
the two.
yeah. So what this is showing us here is basically performance of alts, broadly speaking, in Bitcoin terms. So even though we're seeing a lot of altcoins rip and run over the last couple of weeks here, and really over the last couple of sessions, we're seeing some alts put in some really nice moves. Even though we're seeing that, broadly speaking, alts have done nothing but underperform Bitcoin for basically the entirety of this past cycle. If we're going back in time to 2022, that was the end of the bear, and 2023 was the beginning of the bull. And this tells us that alts have done nothing but underperform in Bitcoin terms for the last 4 years. So just because we're seeing these alts rip recently does not necessarily mean that we're about to see like an alt season. I've seen a lot of prognosticators on YouTube calling for alt season. And I just have a difficult time buying that when Bitcoin dominance is,
Figuratively and literally.
I mean, yeah, man. Well, look at BTC.D. This is Bitcoin dominance up here nearly at 61%. So as long as dominance continues to move to the upside, and Ethereum, I think that this is important to watch too, and Ethereum continues to massively underperform Bitcoin, then I have a hard time seeing alts durably hold on to their gains. So it remains to be seen whether we are still in a Bitcoin bear. But if we still are in a Bitcoin bear, then hey, these rallies out of altcoins might be opportunities to exit positions or potentially initiate short positions. So it really just depends on what your market bias is and what you think is likely to happen over the next couple of months. So, Mike, I've got a couple of pieces of content that I'm ready to play. I'll actually want to start. Which one do you want to start with? Sui or Link? Those two. Which of those? Link. Okay.
I actually hold a good amount of Link, so
Great. Yeah. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at Link because I've read on X that Chainlink over the last couple of months has really upgraded its tokenomics. So let's take a look at this.
And I know that potentially that they're going to be gobbling up more market share than they already have because layers the issue that happened with layer 0 and a lot of these other interoperability plays, they had some issues, and Chainlink has been rock solid, and probably I would dare say, even without looking, is probably the front runner right now when it comes to interoperability.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely could be. Oh, and by the way, Ellie, if you're watching, that trade that we put on yesterday on storm.tg, that's the the perp stacks native to the Ton chain. That trade that we put on yesterday is very profitable right now. So in a percentage terms, we've done pretty well. So you might consider closing that trade. So for anyone who watched the private coaching session yesterday, Ellie and I, we put on a trade on Storm where we got long Ton against short dogs. It's so weird to say. Short dogs. So dogs
like Dawson's.
Dogs is a basically it's just an altcoin, like a meme coin.
Oh,
so
I know. I was making a joke. Short dogs. Dachshunds are those wiener dogs, so they're low riders.
Oh yeah. So we got short dogs against long Tom, and that spread has paid pretty well. It's like a 40% trade right now. So I'm just saying, I was taking a look at Storm. You might consider closing that out. But okay, let's go ahead and play this Chainlink content. And Mike, tell me if you can't hear this.
Chainlink has reorganized into the standardized interoperability, compute, and data verification layer underpinning the entire 2026 on-chain economy. This is the era of on-chain finance, where multi-trillion-dollar institutional networks utilize Chainlink as the universal middleware between private bank ledgers and public decentralized networks. This macro transition from a niche DeFi tool to essential institutional plumbing necessitated a complete overhaul of the network's mechanics under the Economics 2.0 framework. The update addresses a fundamental barrier. Corporate treasuries and regulated banks are legally unable to hold volatile crypto assets on their balance sheets just to pay for network services. By decoupling network utility from the requirement to hold the native asset, the protocol has engineered a self-reinforcing circular loop of absolute token scarcity. To solve the institutional accounting friction, Chainlink deployed the payment abstraction layer, widely referred to as the universal gas mechanism. This mechanism allows enterprises and developers to pay for any Chainlink service using fiat proxies, native blockchain assets, or stablecoins like USDC and PYUSD.
Okay, so this is important. If you could only pay for Chainlink services with Link, wouldn't that mean a lot of utility for the token, number one, but a lot of buy pressure for the token, number two? Why is it that you need to hold Link if you can buy Chainlink services in stables? If you can buy Chainlink services with USDC, why do you need the Link token?
Well, and that's something that we're always pointing out on this channel is and that's kind of why I sold Ondo, and I sold some other tokens, and potentially could sell Link. I'm just kind of waiting for it to pump really nicely because of what you're talking about here, David. Is what is the utility of the token? Why price go up other than speculation and bullish news?
Yeah, when Lambo,
Yeah.
Lambo.
The process begins when users execute transactions across the network-supported blockchains and input their preferred payment asset to cover the fees. Chainlink's cross-chain interoperability protocol then consolidates these disparate fee tokens, routing them from various service chains onto a single designated payment chain. The system then programmatically and autonomously converts these accumulated stablecoins directly into Link tokens using integrated decentralized exchanges.
Huh, okay. So what it's saying is, even if you pay for Chainlink services using USDC, that USDC is then used to buy Link? Is that what I'm understanding here, Mike? I think that's what this is saying.
In the final step, the newly converted Link is routed into smart contracts, where it is withdrawn by node operators as compensation for their computational work. This abstraction layer effectively decouples the user's preferred payment medium from the network's underlying settlement currency. This architecture functions invisibly beneath institutional rails, such as when Swift enables its 11,500 interconnected financial institutions to transfer tokenized real-world assets across disparate ledgers. Through this integration, a fraction of the economic activity within the $132 trillion global asset management sector is systematically routed into the protocol's fee layer. Every institutional transaction executing on the network exerts automated, programmatic buy pressure on the open Link market. In early 2026, the vulnerability of fragmented cross-chain bridging infrastructure evolved from a theoretical concern into a systemic existential risk for the entire crypto ecosystem.
Right.
In April 2026, a sophisticated exploit on the Kelp DAO bridge drained over $292 million in restaked ETH. This loss of capital triggered a definitive, industry-wide flight to quality among institutional-grade DeFi protocols and asset issuers. Kelp DAO immediately abandoned its previous architecture to adopt Chainlink CCIP as its exclusive cross-chain infrastructure. This shift catalyzed a cascade of migrations, most notably from Solve protocol, which discontinued support for 4 separate network bridges. This chart visualizes the scale of that move.
So Solve protocol is a Bitcoin, I guess you could call it maybe kind of sort of like restaking for Bitcoin, kind of sort of.
$700 million in tokenized Bitcoin assets migrated directly to the Chainlink standard to ensure the highest security assurances. Executing these transfers requires complex orchestration, including source chain initiation, validation by an independent risk management network, and final destination execution. Every single step in this multi-layered cryptographic process incurs a network fee. As these fees flow through the universal gas mechanism, the transaction volume from hundreds of millions in tokenized assets is converted directly into link demand. By establishing a monopoly over high-value cross-chain messaging, CCIP enforces a structural baseline of link buying pressure that is driven by operational necessity rather than retail sentiment. While the network captures demand, it also restricts supply by requiring node operators to secure data delivery through staking v0.3. Unlike base layer blockchains, Chainlink staking acts as an economic backstop that guarantees the fidelity and timely delivery of external data. This is governed by Total Value Secured, or TVS. By mid-2026, Chainlink secures over $28 trillion across DeFi and tokenized real-world asset markets. This balancing scale illustrates the logic of Economics 2.0. The financial penalty for malicious data must mathematically outweigh the potential profit of manipulating a feed. The scale of modern tokenization is massive. When Bridge Tower tokenized the DOM-X Copper Gold project, it brought $11 billion in asset value onto the network. At the same time, top-tier asset managers like State Street Global Advisors utilize Chainlink to publish daily net asset value data for the sweep fund. To service these high-value institutional jobs without violating strict protocol collateralization ratios, node operators are forced to continuously acquire and lock more link. This mandatory lockup occurs against a protocol with a hard-capped maximum supply of exactly 1 billion tokens. This dynamic creates a squeeze from both ends. Institutions are programmatically buying it to pay for gas, while node operators are hoarding it to meet their collateral requirements. The result is a severe structural supply squeeze that perpetually drains the liquid market float as the network's total value secured continues to rise. Supplementing this squeeze are auxiliary deflationary sinks, led by the Chainlink Reserve, an on-chain treasury designed for the network's long-term sustainability. By May 2026, the reserve tripled in size within 8 months, accumulating over 3.4 million link captured from network fees and enterprise billing. Data from the second quarter shows consistent inflows of over 120,000 link per week, which are removed from the liquid float to provide a floor for the network's security budget. Acceleration is further provided by the Smart Value Recapture Service, or SVR. SVR allows protocols like Aave to recapture non-toxic MEV, which is then converted into link and routed back to the network ecosystem. The combination of reserve accumulation and SVR conversions pushes the asset toward a net deflationary state, fundamentally severing the network's reliance on token emissions. The 2026 technical architecture has created a divergence between sideways market pricing and aggressive on-chain accumulation. This visualization shows the contrast. While the price remained lateral, private wallets holding between 100,000 and 10 million link increased their holdings by nearly 33 million tokens in a single 30-day window. This quiet removal of hundreds of millions of dollars into private custody mirrors the protocol's mechanics, preparing the network for a potential supply shock. However, the long-term viability of this model faces a primary risk: institutional pilot fatigue and the slow pace of legacy banking reform. A specific structural threat is the development of private bank consortia, like the Canton Network, which handle massive institutional volumes in closed environments.
Right, so Canton doesn't need Link, right?
These
Actually,
institutions
I think they work with Link.
Yeah, but do they use Link for Oracle data? Maybe they do.
Let me actually look that up. I believe they do, but let me look it up to be sure. But keep going.
Yeah.
successfully localize the tokenized economy within private subnets, they could theoretically achieve data consensus without interacting with the public link token. Such a bypass would effectively neutralize the universal gas value capture engine and the demand metrics required to sustain the staking pools. This risk is balanced by the empirical evidence of public adoption, seen in the migrations of Solve, KelpDAO, and the launch of State Street's on-chain fund. Ultimately, the geometric math as mandatory collateral against a fixed supply suggests a structural upward re-rating of the asset's valuation, provided the migration of institutional capital into public interoperability.
Okay. So
it's deeply integrated into Canton, and they're continuing to integrate it more deeply.
Wow.
I
Interesting.
have a bunch of stuff that we can go into details, but I don't want to interrupt this.
Yeah, well, I mean, just taking a look at the Link token price. So if this is about to undergo a re-rating, a price rating.
Like an actual utility-based valuation as opposed to a retail-driven speculative, pricing.
Yeah, so I mean, if I just take a look at this token here, this Link token, and let me just go ahead and remove some of these drawn objects so this is a little bit cleaner. We've got this trend line resistance. So this was support. When it broke at the beginning of this year and Link broke down below support, it actually was able to break down below its October 10th flash crash lows also into bear market territory from the last bear market. But now that Link is starting to push a little bit higher, we've got to start thinking about that 200-day SMA. And that 200-day SMA comes in $11.50. So if Link is able to, number one, break out above that 200-day SMA, and then number two, get above trend line resistance, well, then we've got to start talking about $25 Link again. Because if it gets above the 200-day SMA and trend line resistance, the next level of resistance wouldn't come in until up here in like the 20 some odd dollar range. So this is really where there's a lot of trading activity. So Link actually, now that it's starting to perk up, along with, most other altcoins over the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, it's starting to look interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at SUI. This is another one of these smart contract protocols. And if we just go ahead and take a look here at SUI, there are a couple of levels that are interesting. So for SUI, we've got the first level that needs to get broken is right here at $1.08. So that is the horizontal that needs to be broken on the upside. From there, it's got to get above $1.34. So there's definitely room for SUI to run. The thing about SUI, though, is that it's one of these, low float, high FDV projects. And that just means that there's a lot of inflation potentially. And that's what I want to learn about. So let's go ahead and learn a little bit about SUI and SUI's tokenomics. Here we go.
By mid-2026, SUI has matured into a premier high-throughput Layer 1 network. Built on the technical foundation of Meta's DM project, the infrastructure now serves as a proven substrate for institutional-grade financial products. The network provides sub-second transaction finality and reliable uptime, performance milestones that led the CME Group to launch fully regulated SUI futures contracts in May of 2026. Despite these operational successes, the native asset has dropped 80%. The network's current state is defined by the friction between elite distributed systems engineering and a rigid, high-dilution tokenomic structure. Unlike legacy blockchains that...
Did you hear what it said? High dilution tokenomic structure. That's not good.
process transactions one by one in a sequential ledger, SUI uses a different data model. By treating digital assets as distinct, programmable objects, the network can execute independent transactions simultaneously. This object-centric architecture allows the protocol to bypass the bottlenecks that typically cause congestion in account-based networks. This creates a long-term liability for validators, who must provide hardware to store these complex objects and their historical data indefinitely. To manage this, SUI uses a storage fund. When a user creates a new on-chain object, the protocol detaches a storage fee from the transaction and routes it into a specialized system-level contract. Every 24 hours, the protocol calculates network yield by combining the weight of the storage fund with user-delegated tokens. This produces a nominal 7% return, which is paid to validators to cover their hardware costs. However, because 70% of the total circulating supply is currently staked, these rewards are heavily diluted across the participant base. After adjusting for programmed inflation and the constant influx of new tokens, the real annual percentage yield for a staker sits near zero. Staking SUI functions as a mandatory defensive requirement, protecting holders from the rapid dilution of their proportional network ownership.
Wow, that's not good. So none of things that were just mentioned sound like good things to me. No.
To find actual returns, capital rotated away from baseline staking and into decentralized finance protocols, which reached a $2.6 billion peak in late 2025. That growth reversed in early 2026 as the network faced a series of security breaches that eroded investor confidence. The May 2025 CEDAS exploit illustrates the risk. An attacker used a flash loan to cost an initial overflow check, which then triggered a critical failure in the protocol's liquidity math, allowing them to drain over $200 million in assets. The anxiety returned in April 2026, when Aftermath Finance was forced to halt operations. A logic flaw in its perpetual futures engine allowed for the potential manipulation of liquidity pools, further highlighting the risks inherent in complex DeFi smart contracts. Institutional investors reacted by tightening risk controls. SUI Group Holdings reported a $71 million loss for the quarter and explicitly pulled its assets out of all on-chain yield farming. As shown in this TVL table, remaining liquidity consolidated into simpler, over-collateralized lending markets like Sualend and Navi, while more complex derivatives platforms saw significant outflows. These platforms became havens for capital seeking to avoid the mathematical vulnerabilities discovered in the network's decentralized exchanges. The retreat of major treasuries from high-yield protocols indicates that smart contract risk now places a ceiling on the network's total liquidity and organic growth. This lack of sticky capital makes the network's primary headwind, its token release schedule, more difficult to overcome.
Right. So SUI has this token cliff. There's always an unlock. It seems as though, and I haven't taken a look at the unlock schedule recently, but if memory serves, I'm pretty sure that every single month there's a massive unlock of SUI tokens.
I recall us talking about SUI before, and I believe we touched on that there's regular unlocks.
Yeah, there are.
This allocation breakdown shows the scale of the supply overhang. Over 52% of the 10 billion token maximum supply is locked in reserves and subsidies that will not fully enter the float until after 2030. Rather than using a smooth emission curve, the protocol utilizes cliff vesting, where massive tranches of tokens are released into the tradable float all at once. In April and May of 2026, these cliffs injected nearly 86 million tokens into the market. This graph tracks the market impact. Whenever positive news drives a price rally, a scheduled unlock creates immediate sell pressure, effectively capping the token's valuation. Traders now anticipate these corporate unlocks, resulting in a market psychology that favors selling into strength rather than holding for long-term appreciation. As long as venture capital and institutional entities realize profits during these cliff events, the asset's price will likely remain suppressed, regardless of technical milestones. In the 2026 smart contract sector, networks face intense scrutiny from capital allocators who have multiple high-performance alternatives. The matrix shows diverging economic models. SUI uses inflation to fund state storage, while Aptos implemented a deflationary hard cap and fee burn. The revenue gap is stark. Solana's massive retail adoption generates hundreds of millions in annual fees, an economic moat SUI hasn't replicated.
So here's something that's interesting. Aptos and Solana made it onto the Sweet 16. So the SEC, CFTC guidelines for so-called truly decentralized digital commodities, somehow Aptos made it onto that list. SUI did not. SUI did not. So SUI and Aptos you could think of as sister chains because they basically are. They're both, I believe, they both use the Move programming language, which is that object-based language, which is unique in the digital asset space. There aren't any other chains, to my knowledge, that use that type of programming language. So, these two are sister chains. I think that they were developed by the team behind Facebook's DM project, which ended up getting trashed because of the SEC just like not wanting Facebook to move forward with it. But
well, they launched that token that they determined was like Libre, that was like they considered it a security, and so basically they had to shut it all down.
Yeah. So I mean, imagine Facebook with billions of monthly active users launching their own stablecoin called Diem, they could have subverted the dollar in some way. At least that's the speculation. So the team that built Diem, when they left Facebook, I believe that team split, and some of the guys went and built Sui, and some of the other guys went and built Aptos. And so these are sister chains. But look at the difference in tokenomics. Big difference.
Because Sui's transaction fees are so low, the network must achieve exponential activity growth just to match the revenue required to sustainably pay validators. Specialized chains like Sei further complicate this landscape, siphoning away high-frequency trading volume with hyper-focused upgrades. Compared to deflationary assets and established revenue leaders, Sui's current tokenomic structure is a significant liability for conservative investors. To address these weaknesses, Miston Labs is deploying the S2 stack and the native digital dollar, USD Sui. These upgrades enable gasless transfers. Users send USD Sui without holding native tokens. Behind the scenes, relayers automatically purchase and burn SUI to finalize transactions. This concentrates the purchasing requirement onto enterprise developers, who must acquire and burn the asset to fuel user activity. Success depends on catalysts like the Hashi Bitcoin primitive and Eve Frontier gaming migration, designed to utilize this back-end burning engine. The network is now in a race where organic demand from enterprise utility must scale faster than the programmatic supply set to hit the market. Su has achieved the architectural goals required for a global settlement layer, but it must scale significantly enough to absorb the billions of tokens set to enter the market.
Yeah, so will it be able to scale quickly enough in order to outpace the inflation? That's the question. You know what we should do? We should ask Raoul Paul. That's what we should do. Because remember Raoul Paul?
Did you say RuPaul or Raoul Paul?
No, not RuPaul.
RuPaul's Drag Race?
No, we should ask Raoul Paul. Because he was during the last bull market, he was a big outspoken advocate for SUI, for Sui. But these tokenomics look pretty awful. So yeah, Sui is an interesting project, but if the tokenomics suck, then you can't necessarily like allocate a large portion of a portfolio to it. If we take a look at SUI over here on DeFi Llama, you can see what's happened to DeFi TVL on the Sui chain. It went from, 2 days before the flash crash, it went from 2.57 billion to today sitting at 570 million. So down significantly. DeFi TVL is down significantly from the all-time highs. Now, if we take a look at some of the protocols on Sui, if I'm being completely honest, I've always been underwhelmed by these protocols. Navi and SuiLend, these are the two big money markets. And if we just take a look at Navi real quick, the reason why Navi has always, for me anyway, been underwhelming is, I don't know, I never really liked the UI UX over here. There are certain pieces of information when I'm operating on a money market that I need to be able to see shown to me easily, where it's easy to find important information. And that just hasn't really been the case over here on Navi. They definitely have upgraded the protocol here, but not my favorite money market, I'll put it that way. Now, if we bring it back on over here to DeFi Llama and take a look at SuiLend, this is another one of the money markets over on SUI. And if we take a look at the SuiLend protocol and let this thing load, again, the UI UX, not my favorite, not my favorite. Like, it's important for me that I feel comfortable operating on a protocol and that I know where to find important pieces of information. And I just haven't found that to be the case on SuiLend or on Navi. And that's kept me off of these two protocols. So let's go ahead and see if in the last couple of minutes here, we can maybe switch gears and talk about AVAX. I want to talk about Avalanche a little bit. So let's take a look at AVAX. Here's Avalanche. Now, there are a lot of partnerships, I believe, between AVAX and like large tech companies, but I don't know exactly what that means. whenever I hear partnership, it kind of reminds me not necessarily of anything good. So if we just take a look at AVAX, let's see here. I want to bring up the actual chain itself. So I'm going to go to chains, and what I'm looking for is the AVAX layer 2, which is referred to as the AVAX C chain. So here's Avalanche. There's the Avalanche chain. Take a look at what's happened to DeFi TVL. Oh my God. In 2021, sitting at $10 billion, $10.8 billion. Today, sitting at 650 million. So big drawdown in DeFi TVL. And if we take a look at the protocols that operate natively on the AVAX C chain, well, we're going to be looking at Benki, which is the big money market, native to, yeah, this is Benki. This is the money market native to AVAX. And so if we take a look at Benki, I think that this is a Chinese protocol. I'm not positive about that, but I think it is. And if we're just looking at the UI UX here, I don't really like this, but maybe it works for some people. UI UX is really important.
Colin is a great resource on AVAX. Being that he was one of the original team members there at AVAX.
Yeah. So, why don't we see if, and this piece of video content that I was able to produce on AVAX is going to be a much shorter piece of content. And then we could take a look at that slide deck. So this is one of the older pieces or types of video content that Notebook LM creates. And this is only 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. So we'll be able to run through this quickly, and then we can take a look at that AVAX slide deck.
Can't hear it.
Gotcha. Okay, let me go ahead and restart the screen share. I don't know why StreamYard does this. Sometimes it just doesn't share audio, even though I've got audio set to share. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen. Let's start this over. Here we go. Back this up and hit play.
Let's dive right into Avalanche 2026 and see exactly how it became the Wall Street of Web3. With Ethereum locking down developers and Solana running the meme coin casino, we're seeing a massive mindshare squeeze.
So where does Avalanche fit? Well, they completely skipped the casino and forged a highly lucrative third path.
They pivoted hard from retail, transforming into the highly engineered, compliance-focused infrastructure for traditional global finance. Think renting versus owning. They swapped massive upfront capital lockups for a continuous operational monthly token burn.
This incredibly smart move slashed the barrier to launch an independent Layer 1 blockchain by a whopping 99.9%.
An aggressive 2-year upgrade gauntlet systematically optimized the entire network for high-performance, enterprise-grade deployment.
The Granite upgrade absolutely crushed it, securing the fastest major Layer 1 time to finality at under 0.8 seconds.
Institutions love this risk-free setup. No principal flashing for downtime, plus seamless Apple Face ID biometric signing.
So that slashing, that was something that Colin was talking about the last time we were discussing AVAX and the tokenomics and comparing it to Ethereum. Why is it that validators need to get economically slashed? And I think what Colin was saying is that you don't need the slashing to secure the network. Validators don't need to face that type of economic risk to continue to secure the network. So,
by May 2026, the network's tokenomics proved highly resilient, successfully absorbing its biggest historical supply shocks. Now, what's really interesting is the massive chunk of supply effectively yanked completely out of active circulation.
Plus, over 5.4 million AVAX from base fees literally went up in smoke, locking in a powerful deflationary mechanism.
This structural shift directly fueled massive real-world asset adoption, pulling in absolute heavyweights like Progmat and Visa. Today, global banking giants like JP Morgan trust Avalanche's sub-second speeds for multi-billion-dollar back-end settlement systems.
Adding clear regulatory status is an official commodity, and those direct institutional capital pipelines are wide open.
But hey, right alongside those corporate chains, the public C chain still runs a thriving multi-million-dollar DeFi economy.
It's not bulletproof, though. Without massive, widespread adoption of those L1 subscriptions, token scarcity could completely tank.
So, the crucial point is this paradox. High staking participation actually squeezes yields below risk-free traditional rates. And objectively, on decentralization, Avalanche still trails far behind the massive distribution networks of Solana and Ethereum.
So Nakamoto coefficient is a measure of network decentralization, and Avalanche is significantly less decentralized than many of its competitors.
Then there's P-chain dependency. A catastrophic bug there could systematically take down every single connected institutional L1.
Which leaves us wondering, will TradFi adoption scale fast enough to secure this massive Wall Street bet?
I don't know. So why in the world would a big institution want to use AVAX rather than a private walled garden like Canton? That's a legitimate question. So why don't we take a look here in the last 5 minutes, Mike, at the slide deck and just see if we can learn something new about AVAX. Okay, so in the last bear market, the start of this previous bull market, AVAX was, I guess, a general purpose layer one, competing directly with Ethereum for the highly fragmented, hyper speculative retail liquidity, right? But now AVAX has transformed itself into what it wants to become, which I think is an institutional hub for liquidity. So the premier infrastructural hub for real world asset tokenization. So you see these buzzwords everywhere: RWA tokenization, TradFi settlement, et cetera, et cetera. But if we are in the blockchain wars, which of these chains is going to survive? I think it's going to be winner take most. And so if you're an institution and you've got to choose between using AVAX or using Canton, or maybe using some other chain entirely, why would you be incentivized to use AVAX over Canton? I don't know that you really would be.
No.
Okay. Yeah. And so here's, regulatory clarity is definitely a positive thing. And AVAX made it onto the SEC CFTC Sweet 16. So AVAX categorized as a digital commodity. That's definitely a big net positive for the AVAX token. So why don't we, in the last couple of minutes here, take a look at the price performance of AVAX. So I'm going to bring it on over here to TradingView, and here is AVAX in US dollar terms. So let me just go ahead and remove some of these drawn objects here, clean up the chart so that we can see this a little bit more clearly. And it looks to me like, we've got that 200-day moving average up there at $12. You can see there's the SMA at $12. We've also got this horizontal level of resistance. So back in December of 2025, the end of last year, this low, this was an important pivot. When this level was broken to the downside, it flipped from support to resistance. So this would be the first level of resistance on the upside. Well, really, you could say $9.80 is the first level of resistance, but get above $9.80 and $11.20 is what we would be looking at. So $11.20 and $11.90, this zone up here should be an important level of resistance for AVAX. But I remember when AVAX was ripping and running at the beginning of the last bull market. So AVAX at the beginning of the last bull went from $9 to $65 over the course of, what was that? From October 23 to March 24. So we're talking about, a little bit less than, 5 months or so. That is one hell of a performance out of AVAX. Can it repeat that performance? Well, there's a lot of levels of resistance that it needs to break out above on the upside before we can start talking about, $30 AVAX or anything like that. So number one, it's got to get above that 200-day moving average. If it's able to do that, though, and durably break out above that 200-day moving average, then the next level would come in at $35. So we're starting to see really nice breakouts on a lot of altcoins. And if we continue to see these alts run higher and Bitcoin does not break down, if Bitcoin does not break down and instead is able to break out above 83, 84K, that's Bitcoin's 200-day moving average. If it's able to do that, well, then we might actually see some type of mini alt season. That's just amazing to me. And if we take a look at the NASDAQ, this wealth effect might rotate even further into digital assets.
That might fuel it.
It might fuel it. It really might. So, really interesting opportunities shaking up in the digital asset space now.
Awesome. Well, as always, I freaking appreciate all that freaking info. It's I actually learned a little bit about Chainlink that I didn't already know. So yeah, that was definitely informative. But for all of you out there that are listening, we appreciate you. And the fact that we're kind of in the depths of a bear market, and you're still engaged, and you're still learning, and still trudging ahead says a lot about those of you that are out there, because there's a lot of people who have exited. So you're the ones that potentially are going to be the ones that profit. Everybody's going to call you lucky. Everybody's going to say that that you lucked out, and but you're the one that's putting in the time. Whenever it's not interesting, whenever things aren't pumping, and you're educating yourself, that's the people that separate themselves from the herd. So on that note, please come on over to thenode.pro. That's our official website, and you'll find everything there. You'll find our schedule, you'll find our channel, you'll find all of our no-cost educational content, our community content, and a lot of our paid services. So our newsletter. You're able to sign up for David's coaching calls, his live calls. You're able to buy swag. If you want to buy merch, things like that to help support the channel. We appreciate you. So I think that's about it, David. So later on today, we have the market wrap up, and tonight, me and Jeff have crypto and chill. So if you're so inclined, join us for those. And until next time, Veteran Crypto out.
Peace.